Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Believe in Mavs. And this one's different. This one's special because the season is now over and we are now entering the NBA draft. And so I thought it would be a great idea to not bring just an old friend, but a guy who's made his way from the bottom, the same way I did, starting with a microphone, starting with a laptop, and starting with StreamYard, whatever it may be. And upon this journey, and now he's covering the NBA draft for No Ceilings. I got my guy Steven in the building. Steven, how you doing today?
Mo, man, it's awesome. It's I love whenever I get to work with someone that I came up out of the trenches, out the mud with, man, because it's such a cool feeling. And I see all the great work that you're doing now with Believe in Mavs. And I was waiting for, Mo Cheese to hit me up, man, big time Mo to hit me up and get on here and talk draft. So I'm glad that we were able to make this happen, brother.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, it's just nice because it's like the things that you've done from the beginning and now with No Ceilings. And I know how you're how crazy it is to balance it with being in the military and all that. So I know how tough it is. But the fact that you're still able to do it, the fact that you've made a name for yourself and a stamp and a lane in the draft, I'm always going to support. And I was like, man, hopefully we still cool enough. I can just hit him up, bro. I need you. And I didn't even say, hey, do you want to come on the show? I said, I think I need you. And it's because I do. And it's for this conversation right here. So
what did I say? What did I say?
You said you was waiting on me. You was waiting on me to hit you up. But I'm like, I need you. And so this is a perfect time. So the NBA draft is coming up. And you actually happen to interview a player that the Dallas Mavericks recently worked out. So we're not going to get too much into him. Because anybody that's intrigued after this, I want you to go check out the interview that he had, the sit down that he had with this player so that y'all can get to know the player. But just tell me a little bit about the player and where you think he will fit with the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, so Mo, you're referring to the interview that I just did with Louisiana Tech star Isaiah Crawford. Now, Isaiah is a player who I personally love. I'm going to mention him in a segment later. But yeah, I just did an interview with him. I wrote about him not too long ago for our website. So anybody who wants to know more about him, you can do that. But I mean, Mo, we're talking about a guy who's about 6'6", 6'7", has shot 40% from deep in 2 consecutive seasons. Louisiana Tech, just pretty much plug and play all over the defensive side of the ball. He's a big Kawhi Leonard guy. Watches Kawhi Leonard film. And you can see some of the similarities because he is just a monster on, blocking shots at the college level, making steals, rebounding, has grown as a playmaker and can shoot. There are really not a lot of holes in his game. The major concerns are with his injury history, as he has had 2 ACL tears. I can discuss this here in a little bit more, but I just interviewed him. So anybody who's interested, I know that the Mavs wanted to get him in the building and get a closer look on him. And I just think that he fits, dude, because, I mean, he can hit threes. We saw how Dallas really needed three-point shooting, especially in the NBA Finals. He has been a consistent three-point shooter. He, with a smaller workload, Louisiana Tech just pretty much put all the pressure on both sides of the ball on his shoulders. Smaller, scaled-down role. I believe that he would be a great fit for the Dallas Mavericks should he be available when they're on the clock.
Yeah, so everybody definitely be sure to go check that out for the simple fact, I know he's going to go into detail. Steven is a great interviewer, so make sure you go check that out and also go check out the piece he wrote about him on No Ceilings on their website, or like you do with me, like I do, subscribe to them on Substack. It's a lot easier because every time they drop something, and there's so many of them going crazy, it just email notification to your phone or the app, and you open it up, and boom, here go draft content every day, especially as we're getting closer to the draft. So I know you'll bring him up here in a little bit, but I want to talk about your 3 favorite players in this draft. And however you feel fit to answer that. I know when I ask that, people want to hear well, they're going to take in who's the 3 best players in this draft according to Steve and No Ceilings. That's not what I mean. I more so mean you draft guys kind of really, y'all dive in, go all in on prospects or all out. And essentially for the next 15, 20, however long you're doing this, whatever lane you continue to be great with the draft, kind of you find guys that make you seem like geniuses. You get low on guys and we'll be like, man, I wasn't as high. So your 3 favorite players entering this draft, we'll one by one talk about them.
Yeah, so I'm a big Jalen Tyson fan out of the University of California. He's an upperclassman. By draft night, he will be 21 years old. But Mo, with in shoes, we all know that basketball players play in shoes. He's going to be about 6'7", 215 pounds. He's an upperclassman. So he's technically a junior, but with COVID and stuff like that, he's a little bit older. So the thing with him is that at Texas Tech, he was a very athletic player, and very good on the defensive side of the ball. He transfers out of Texas Tech, goes to California, plays for Mark Madsen, former NBA player, is now coaching in college basketball. And he is just the offense. Now, what's great about him, Mo, is that he has all the ancillary skill sets that you want in a role player, right? So he came in, shot really well. I believe it's like 36-37% from deep on high volume. A lot of those were very difficult looks too, because like I said, he was the motor for the University of California. So you're talking about a guy who had to do a lot of self-creation and creation for others. A lot of his looks were off of the dribble. So when you look at that, when you look at the fact that he is comfortable operating out of the pick and roll, he was a fantastic rebounder, particularly on the offensive end. And Mo, one of the things that we always discuss at No Ceilings, and you'll hear this at a lot of other draft places as well, is that rebounding typically translate ups, and so do steals. Now, I will kind of put a caveat on his name as a defender this year. If you watch California defensive film this year, you're probably going to be underwhelmed. But Mo, what do we know about basketball players, right? What did we see with Luka whenever he fouled out in the finals, right? Is that typically you don't want your best player, the player that is doing all the creation on the offensive side, to go all out on the defensive end, not only because it expends a lot of energy, but if they get in foul trouble, then you lose your offensive identity, right? So you kind of saw a little bit of that this year with Jalen at California. But if you go back and you look at the Texas Tech film, one thing that we know is that they recruit athletic players, and then they also have a big emphasis on the defensive side of the ball. So if you look at his defensive film prior to California, and then you look at what he was able to do on the offensive end this year at California, now we're looking at a guy who, Mo, I have him ranked 13th on my personal board, right? You won't see that in a lot of places. You won't even see that at the No Ceiling consensus board, because, we kind of take and pick from everybody. We got about a dozen of us at the website now. So I bolster him up for our No Ceilings team. I would take him in the lottery. I think that he's a great fit for places like an Oklahoma City, like a Sacramento. There's a lot of teams that would benefit by having a 6'7", 3-and-D prospect, even though he's an upperclassman, particularly in this year's draft, because you see there are going to be a lot of prospects that have holes in their game. I think if you look at him as a role player, Jalen Tyson, he's going to be a great fit no matter where he goes.
Yeah, and something that, like you said, that I know people will shy away, and this is such an issue for people, is that he's an upperclassman. So, like, on draft night, he'll be 21 years old. My pushback for people that be so concerned about that is there's 19, 21, 2-year difference. Now, I know people here one and done, and so they're like, they got to be a lot better player. Those are going to be the superstar players. But like, if I draft a guy at 21, if I get the max out of his career, I have him till he's 34, 35. So I get a guy for 14, 15 years as opposed to 16, 17, 18. But either way, if I draft a 21-year-old who might be better than the 19-year-old right now, and I maximize them, I still got all my money's worth, the draft pick worth, and I got an entire career out of them. So just when people hear the upperclassmen and the 21, I hate that to always be a knock for me, just because, like, there's not that big of a difference. He went to school. People think going to school 2, 3, and 4 years is such a bad thing. And you're starting to see, look at my example for that would be this year, Jaime Jaquez was ready to contribute for a playoff contending team like the Miami Heat right away because of the fact he was in school longer than a one and done, because he was more pro ready, because he's 21, 22 years old, as opposed to 19 and just graduated high school a year ago. Like, there's so many factors for the young guys that people, they just shy away from a guy that was in school for 3 or 4 years. Sometimes these guys be good enough, but they're like, if I do 4 years, I can go first round instead of second round. I'm an NBA player after year 1, but that's late second round, maybe an undrafted free agent, really have to carve out my way, as opposed to I do 3 or 4 years, I'm going in the lottery or I'm going in the first round. Look at Jaime Jaquez. Like, he literally was in the rotation after the first 6 weeks of the NBA season for the Miami Heat, who had just played in the NBA Finals the year prior. So when people get scared, when you got like guys like you say, oh, they're upperclassmen, they're going to be 21. Like, I know for you that's an evaluation, but for other people, they're like, he loves them and he's 21 years old. Like, they act like guys that are 21 are about to turn 30 the next year, and you'll have no use for them after 2-3 years. So I'm sure you get like some of the same sentiment with covering a lot of these guys, especially in this draft that doesn't have a lot of one and dones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about guys like Dalton Connect, who's going to be 23. And I was on a Sacramento Kings show the other day, and I was just kind of like joking that, you know, when he gets drafted, I think his grandson is going to be playing college basketball next season, right? Because, you know, and obviously that's a little bit of, you know, tongue in cheek there, Mo, but it's just because players aren't done developing, you know what I mean? And like, we all know that. But I'm also a realist in the fact that, like, there are players who, if you get them early enough, it seems like they are, you know, 25 for like ever in the league. You know what I mean? Like we hear like Andre Drummond like finally turned 30 in the league, and he's been in the league for like 20 years. It's because they get in the league so young, and so you have a longer runway. You know, you find yourself being more patient with them. But you know, you talk about players in this year's draft, and that's why I like Jalen, is because he's like what I'm calling like a just add water prospect. Like, he's ready made. You don't have to teach him a whole lot of concepts or schemes or stuff like that. You really just got to teach him like your team's philosophy, and you know what his specialty or what his role is going to be on a team, and then just let him turn loose. And he's physically built too. I mean, 215 pounds at his size, Mo. You're not going to have to be like, let's put him in the G League and hope that he bulks up, and maybe if he's strong enough, then we can actually see if his game translates. You know, we know that the game will translate, and we know that his frame is going to hold up, and strength is often under discussed as an important aspect to get these players on the floor.
Yeah, so and so like basically you think the same way. Like, we could put ages next to guys and kind of run you off a prospect, but at the same time, especially when we're talking about the OKCs, the Sacramentos, the teams that could be in the playoffs, I need a guy that could contribute today. And so that's why teams end up trading all their draft picks for older vets. And then they say, well, I don't want a guy that's 19, but at the same time, I don't want a guy that's 21, but I'll trade these picks for a guy that's 25 and ready made. So it's, I don't know. I guess there's no consistency in how GMs really want to handle these prospects that are 21, 22, 23 entering the NBA. So you talked about Jalen Tyson. So who's another guy that you're high on, one of your top 3 prospects heading into this draft?
Yeah, so top 3 guy that I'm high on that is starting to fall down the ranks would be Nikola Topic. And now he's got a partially torn ACL. And listen, I understand that general managers, like, they have their career on the line, you know, so they're not just drafting for the betterment of the team, but there's also a little bit of self-interest in there. So are you going to be comfortable drafting a guy who might take, you know, the better part of a full season before you get him on the court? Maybe that's something that you tell the team owner, is that, hey, look, you know, kind of bear with me a little bit this year. This guy, Nikola Topic, he's a rock star. When I get him back, and if I have a high pick next year, look and see what the team looks like then. Maybe that does help out a general manager that is at a little bit of turmoil. But even those teams that are looking to rebuild, like a Washington Wizards and other teams like that, like a Detroit Pistons, maybe there are teams that, or San Antonio Spurs, right, who have Victor Wembanyama, and maybe you have a longer runway and patience and tolerance and multiple picks within the top 10. Maybe Nikola Topic makes sense for them. But Mo, what I love about him is that he's going to be one of the very few players. There are like 7 players within my personal top 100 that will still be 18 on draft night. So that's a very low number relative to a lot of other years. So one, that sets him apart from his peers just by when he was born, right? Now let's talk about the fact that he's 6'6" and plays a point guard. So now you got positional size and the age thing working against you, or working for you in your favor. He's also probably top 2 in terms of best overall passer within the entire class. When you're looking at people who are most likely going to be drafted, he's number 1. Now there's another player, Juan Nunez, who played for Ratio Farm out of Ulm. He is a wizard with the basketball too, but there's a whole lot of concerns with him. Topic, on the other hand, is a high rim pressure guy. So when you look at what works in the NBA, players who can pass well and who could get to the rim freely, there's a lot of value in that. And again, he's 18. Now, there are questions with his shooting, and I get that because he wasn't like an above, 35% three-point shooter. But he was a very good free throw shooter. He's got great touch around the basket. He's got excellent body control. And again, he's a wizard with the ball in his hand. So when I'm looking at where he is falling, and again, I understand it on the fact that like injuries and things of that nature, but in a class where you're not necessarily overwhelmed with the talent at the very top, if he's going to fall, he could end up being like your Michael Porter Juniors or whatnot, who
Mhm.
fall down the draft due to injury and come in and is going to be one of the, like, it almost feels like a certainty, Mo, that he is going to be in a redraft. He goes significantly higher, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, and he seems like a guy like, and like I said, you're more so educating me now. I know like Nikola Topic, like that's been a name really since the draft ended last year. Like, and I know like guys like you and the rest of the guys that know Sillins, y'all go as soon as this draft over, y'all own the next year. Like y'all are on the film for next year. Y'all will spend a couple days breaking down what picks you love, what picks you didn't, and then y'all are on the next year. And so since last year, like his name's been really hot and really high. And I know before the ACL thing, like his name was in the hat. And I think there were about 10 names that we think could be in the hat to go number one. I don't think he would have ever went number one, but his name was in the hat that if you picked one, you wouldn't be surprised. So the ACL, I get it. Like it's going to push you away. But like you said, this kid's only 18. Like, so therefore, even if I draft him at number 5 and he doesn't play for me this year, he's still going to be the same age as probably the second, third, fourth, and fifth best draft picks in next year's draft. And I understand how loaded or possibly loaded next year's draft is, but like he still would be the same age as all of those guys that are going to play 1 year in college and enter the draft. So the injury thing doesn't scare me as much, especially now. We're in 2024. Guys come back from ACLs in like 4 months nowadays. Like they used to be career enders, then they'd be like 8 months, now 6 months. These guys be ready to go in 4 months and be in 5-on-5, fully participating in contact drills after 4 months with an ACL injury. So I think he will play at some point during the season. I agree with you. And he's a guy like you said, if he falls, one of these championship type contending teams, I would would even think about trading up to draft him. If you're a Denver Nuggets or a Boston Celtics or somebody, why wouldn't you trade up? If he falls to that 18 to 22 and it's not unreasonable to move up, it won't cost you that much because of what next year's draft's going to look like. People are going to be more intrigued about moving pieces to be available. So why not one of those, either Celtics, a championship team, or the Dallas Mavericks or Denver Nuggets, even somebody like the Lakers? Like you take him, even if you sit him a year, I still have a 19-year-old guy, NBA ready to go with some prior pro experience at the overseas level. So I could easily see how you would fall in love with him. And God forbid in 2024, a guy doesn't shoot 40% from the three-point line entering the NBA. Man, you can't draft him. So like the fact that you pointed it out the way you did is like, yeah, as much as I love him, people are going to knock his three-point percentage. And he can literally do it all, except he's not a great three-point shooter, but you don't have to be in today's, everybody doesn't have to shoot the three ball 35% or better in today's NBA. I feel like just Steph came along and changed how you look at prospects and their shooting ability. Like that's just what it is. It's like ever since he came, everybody has to be able to shoot. Everybody got to be able to shoot from the parking lot. If not, they're not NBA players. So that's just my take on Topic and some of these prospects in the draft. So your third guy, the next guy that you're really in love with outside of Topic and Jalen.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at players who I think are going to leave an imprint on the NBA, I don't think that there's anybody. I think this is going to be a popular pick, but Devin Carter out of Providence.
I've been hearing that name.
Oh my goodness. So Mo, I wrote a piece on him where I compared him to other all defensive NBA guards, like dating all the way back until Chris Paul. And I didn't do that to him because I don't want to compare anyone to Chris Paul. Dude's a legend, like a one-of-one type player, right? But outside of Chris, and you look at your Pat Bevs, your Marcus Smarts, your Drew Holidays, your Alex Caruso's, your Derek Whites, all those guys, right? He compares very favorably. Now, in shoes, he's about 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But my man has almost a 6'9" wingspan. So just looking at the measurements, he measures like an all defensive guard. Mm-hmm. Now, when you turn on the film, the dude is like, I have compared him a lot to like an NBA version of Troy Polamalu. Like he's a mean dude on the floor. Like he takes it personal when anyone thinks that they can shoot on him. He held all of his opponents this year, Mo, to less than 33% from the three-point line this year. And he locked him down in the paint too. So he's got the size. I believe he weighed in right around 198 pounds, but he looks so much bigger. And when an NBA team gets him into their locker room and in their nutrition and training and things like that, this dude is going to be able to like move up and down the lineup. So just defensively, we're talking about one of the nastiest dudes. He also like broke the 3/4 sprint record at the NBA Combine this year, had like a 42-inch vertical, and like blew everyone out of the water. In that piece that I wrote about Mo, he smokes everybody in athletic and strength testing. Like it's remarkable. And then you look at the growth that he had on the offensive side of the ball. He has grown into a very reliable 3-point shooter, right? He's a guard size, but he is not going to be like a lead initiator, which I don't think hurts him, because when we look at like your Bostons, your Indianas, your New Yorks, your Oklahoma Cities, these teams that employ like multiple guard lineups, he can do so much. He was also a fantastic rebounder, very similar to like a Brandon Podziemski from Santa Clara last season. He grades out very highly on the defensive rebounding side, which translates up. He's a great on-ball defender and team defender, which typically translates up. He's not going to need the rock in his hands, but you understand, Mo, that whenever you get him on your team, that he is going to do all the grit grind work, and that he's going to be a reliable 3-point shooter, and he's going to make smart passes. Now, he's not going to be a floor bender. He's not going to be like a Luka out there, right? Like bending the defense, manipulating him with his eyes and look-offs and things like that. But you trust him to make the smart decisions with the ball in his hand. And again, he's going to be one of these guys that's 22 years old on draft night. So again, kind of an older guy, but he's a just add water player, man. Like you put him in your rotation. You trust his professional ability. He's the son of a 13-year NBA veteran, and Anthony Carter, who's a coach for the Memphis Grizzlies, who got his NBA career started with the Miami Heat. There's a lot of people that love that Devin Carter to Miami Heat marriage. It just makes so much sense. There's not going to be a shortage of team. Like Mo, he could break the draft order on draft night. I just want everyone to understand that. Like there's people that believe that teams as high as Charlotte might be interested in taking this guy, even though he's not considered a quote unquote like high ceiling player. He's just one of these dudes that is a professional and you trust to come in day one and be a contributor.
Yeah, and that's the problem is like when a guy like you says all of that, all people are going to hear is, well, his ceiling isn't as high. So I would love for anybody that would challenge you on that, go find every prospect, whether you do this NBA draft stuff or not, go find the guys that you love that had super high ceilings. And then out of those 10 guys, tell me the 3 or 4 that hit their ceiling that you loved to dispute. Well, he's not a high ceiling guy, but like we are in the age, we're literally talking about like the difference in a Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks is having a guy like a Derek White, a Drew Holiday. You know, when Milwaukee had got Patrick Beverly, like regardless of what it turned out to be, you were like, man, they need a guy like that. And there's not a lot of guys running around the NBA that you could just pick up in free agency that's a Pat Bev, Derek White type of player. And so coming into this draft, there's a guy that you say he could do that. And then you're talking about like Miami. Like we know they just had Jaime Jaquez. We know what kind of rookie year he had.
Yep.
Take away Victor Wembanyama, Jaquez might have won rookie. Take away the 2. Chet and Wembanyama, like he was probably the 3rd best rookie throughout the year. And he was definitely consistent and played in a lot of big games because obviously Miami, even though they lost the first round, they still played in the playoffs. So he played in a lot of meaningful games. And if Carter can do the same thing, then why not a team like Charlotte actually be like, you know what? We might pick, I don't know exactly what pick Charlotte had, but we might pick in the top 10. And everybody wants us to pick this 19-year-old whose ceiling's crazy high. But that hasn't worked out for Charlotte that much. Look at every young guy that was one and done that they've taken. Their injury history is bad. Their culture as far as these guys developing and seeming like they're taking ball serious is bad. So you might need a guy who's been in college and can walk into an NBA organization mature. You don't have to worry about – there's a difference between being 21 and 18. There's a difference between being 25 and 21. I get that. But he's going to be more mature than probably anybody else, one and done or only played in 2 years, that you would want to walk in that building for Charlotte. I think maturity is one of the biggest problems with them. And so if you could get a mature guard that you can put alongside your all-star caliber point guard and LaMelo Ball, if he stays healthy, that's a match made in heaven to me. And like we got a guy who's almost the same age as LaMelo. LaMelo, what, 23? Like 22, 23. So you get a guy who's about the same age but I'm a little more mature and I understand this journey to get to the NBA. You guys need a guy like me and I understand what my role could be for this team. So when people hear, well, their ceiling's not that high, but like people's floor can still be starting caliber players that contribute on championship teams. Like if that's your floor and you won't be everybody wants to draft the all-star, superstar. It's got to be the next Luka, next Trae Young. Well, in this draft, most people tell you there's not a single person in there that is the next Luka or next Trae Young, and it probably surprise everybody if there was 10 years from now. So you do take the guys that are ready to contribute today. And so that's what I think about, especially this NBA draft. When you tell me that people will tell me the talent isn't that great, we're already moving forward to next year. Well, guess what? There's 2 rounds that these GMs have to make picks regardless. They could be looking at next year all they want. And making the wrong pick, you could not be sitting in that seat to make another pick next year in what's supposed to be a star-studded, a lot of big names draft. So now let's talk about some of your sleepers. You got 3 sleepers, just same way we did, 3 favorite players. So now the sleepers, of course, people hear sleepers, and now it's like, who Steven's going to tell us we're not thinking is going to be a superstar, but they turn out to be a superstar. It's not what a sleeper is. It's just people don't understand that. So go ahead, take the floor. Give us your first sleeper in this draft.
So my first sleep, let's go. I'm not going to go in order of like who I think is going to be the best of all the sleepers. Let's just go ahead and get to the guy that we were talking about earlier, Isaiah Crawford. Let's just go ahead and do this one. I have Isaiah as a first round talent on my board. You won't find that in a lot of other places. And Mo, you know me well enough. I'm not trying to be a contrarian, right?
Trust me.
I get the red. Yeah. You know. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are concerned about the multiple ACL injuries. And again, that makes sense to me. If you tell me that you're concerned about that, there's validity to that. If you tell me that you're worried that he played at Louisiana Tech and you're worried about the level of competition consistency, I understand that. That makes sense to me. But when you start trying to say that like he's not talented enough, that's where I kind of take issue with him, because he does literally everything, Mo. Like literally everything. So my thing is if I'm looking at a guy who played against lower level of competition, I want him to play like they are. And my man does that. Like he's not going to be like a number 1 scoring option, but he was for Louisiana Tech. He averaged like 16 points per game. He's a high rebounder, high assist, high steal, high block, high efficiency guy. I mean, like, again, 50, 40 years from the field and from deep, right? He's a reliable free throw shooter as well, like in that mid to high 70s frame as well. And he just sees the floor so well. There's not like Louisiana Tech would put him in such interesting positions. More like one night his role was to be an ISO wing defender. Like if they're going up against a team with a lead scorer type player, he would do that. If they're going up against a team that has like a premier big man for their conference, he would play not necessarily against the center, although there were a lot of times in the scheme where he was like a center. He would play help off of them because he has such a long range. I believe he's got a 7'1" wingspan at 6'6". So I mean, this dude is long and lanky. He's got those go-go gadget arms that everybody loves out of these defenders, right? And he's just so daggum smart. I think whenever you look at him as a role player in the NBA, Mo, like again with the Mavericks working him out, like if I could tell you, Mo, that you get someone who shot 40% for multiple seasons and like is a plus 3-point shooter for his career, who also is a hard-nosed, versatile, rugged defender who rebounds and can make those smart, connective, like next look passes, I think that Dallas Mavericks fans would love to have somebody like that on their team. I think that every NBA team would love to have a player like that on their team. And the thing is, Mo, where I am like starting to, I'm active on Twitter. I'll talk to anybody that wants to talk to me. I want to talk to them. They start bringing up but the injury stuff. I'll frame it like this, Mo. I would rather take a player who I know can do all the important things at their position on the floor and understand that they might not have the longest NBA career. But when they do play and they are a part of their team, I know that they're going to be a positive contributor. I will take that player as opposed to a guy who might not be in the NBA next season and played a full year and has a lot of question marks around their game. But if everything breaks right, they might be in the same position that Isaiah Crawford. I feel way more comfortable that he can go in and be day one. I'm not going to avoid taking this guy who just completed 2 consecutive seasons without injury. That was a big question mark. He had a great year last year. NBA team said, let's see if you can do it for 2 years in a row. He came back, played in, and started every game for Louisiana Tech for 2 consecutive years. So he's shown me that he can stay healthy. I would rather bet on a guy like that who, if he is healthy, I know is going to stay in the NBA, as opposed to a player who might have shown me that he is healthy, but I doubt whether or not he's going to outlast his rookie contract. That's where I'm at with Crawford.
Yeah, and you would think, like, okay, if he played 2 years in a row, like, injuries were a concern. How do you prove that, like, I'm not, because ACL can be freak accidents too. Like, so they treat that like, oh, he doesn't take care of his body or whatever, so you're always hurt. This is the ACL we're talking about. We're talking about ligament damage, not like he's always on a sprained ankle or it's because he's out of shape, so the damage to his body is a little bit different. Like, no. So now staying healthy for 2 years in a row, I would feel like I'd put that part of the conversation to bed. Like, now I would feel like, okay, the injury history is there. So, but it's history. Like, do we question the Civil War anymore? Like, no, it's just history. It's just the past of what it is. But we don't think, we don't talk about the Civil War to make future decisions. So, like, I would think he's done enough. It is in his history, but he's grown past it and showed you for 2 years in a row, for 365 days twice. I can stay healthy, play a full season, contribute. And like you said, I could contribute to a high caliber basketball team right now if you draft me. So that would be something like everybody would have to love. I could see if he was coming off an ACL injury or he tore it last year and it was in between. He played one season, got hurt again, played another season. I get that. But 2 years in a row, like, at some point we have to be like, hey, a guy had freak injuries. It happens. He bounced back. He didn't have any knee issues for 2 years in a row after tearing his ACL twice. I think this guy's good. I'm sure the doctors they're giving their medical opinion. So you have enough medical information to understand that, like, if he's cleared to play, why not draft him? If a doctor will clear him to play 5-on-5 and work in the combine and work out for all these teams, then he's healthy enough entering the NBA draft. Anything after the draft, there's not much you could do about it. A guy could get hurt waking up out of bed. We heard, I forget who it was, but somebody was in the league and tore their Achilles. John Wall tore his Achilles at his house. Like, so you can get hurt waking up out of bed. So when you prove a few years in a row that you could play every game and play at a high level, I'm not really worried about the injuries. So what's another sleeper for you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back. I mentioned Juan Nunez for Ratio Farm Ulm when I was given my breakdown for Nikola Topic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stay with the Ratio Farm Ulm team, but I'm gonna go to Pacome Dadier, who I have been kind of like one of the guys that are just like at bat for this guy in terms of his outcome, because there's a player that I'm sure everyone is aware of now. If you've been tuning into draft conversations, everyone's heard the name Tijane Salon, who it's taken me a while to come around. I have Tijane 21 on my board, still way lower than what a lot of other people have. I have a lot of concerns because he's very hypothetical, but I did a big breakdown of him against Pacome Dadier, who I have 16th on my personal board, because they're both going to be 18 on draft night. Tijane is only like 15 days younger than Pacome, so they're the same. They're the same runway ahead of them, right? So if we're keeping all things 100, they're about that, right? Everyone talks about Tijane like he's a monster because he's big, which he is. I mean, I think that he's going to be around 6'9", 6'10". And is roughly around 220 pounds. Pacome Dadier is 6'8", 6'9", and is like less than 10 pounds lighter than him, and he's a wing, right? So what's interesting about Pacome is that he's got this guard background upbringing that he did when he was playing in like these French national teams and playing with his countrymen like a Tijane Salon. He grew up playing guard, right? Naturally, I think in the NBA he's going to be a wing, but at Ratio Farm he played the 4. So now I'm talking about a guy who's like 6'8", 6'9", which is still freaking huge. Who's 18 years old, shot 37% as a teenager in a European league, and like makes good reads, has good ball handling ability. Not the best defender, but the thing is that people talk about high upside with Tijane as an offensive player. I don't understand why Pacome can't have the conversation had with him on the defensive side of the ball, right? Where I think that he's going to be a solid NBA defender because he's big and he's long and he shows great court awareness and natural feel. And he's still learning the game, just like Tijane Salon is. But he has a much more polished offensive game. I trust him to come in day one and be a good shooter. I trust him to make smart passes. He's a great offensive rebounder too for his position. He graded out very well on the offensive glass. So again, we talk about the things that translate up, rebounding being a great indicator. Like every NBA player, or not every, 98% of all NBA players were good rebounders no matter where they played, including Trae Young. Like people even think that it doesn't apply to all positions. It does. It really does. So Pacome has like all these great athletic. He tested the best athletically over to James Law and had a higher vertical and everything. So like I'm not trying to besmirch like the honor of Tijane Salon. I think that he's going to be a great player. But what I'm trying to do with Pacome is strap his name to the rocket ship that is a Tijane Salon. Everyone's thinking about him. I genuinely believe that Pacome Dadier is going to be a great defender or a great player with a chance to grow into becoming a better defender with an already polished offensive NBA skill set.
Yeah, and so for guys that aren't great defenders heading into the NBA, I've always been like, defense is about will. Like, do you want to be a great defender? Do you want that attached to your name? And you can develop that just maturing. You can develop, like, it's easier to be a better defender than it is if you're a bad defender than it is to be a great offensive player if you're not gifted offensively. Because there's certain things that no matter how much you work on it, there's a ceiling of how good you'll get at it. Like, the greatest players of all time, Michael Jordan still was never the greatest three-point shooter. LeBron was never the greatest three-point shooter. No matter how much, even when he improved and took that jump in his career, he still, compared to other good three-point shooters in the NBA, he wasn't that good. And so we focus on, well, what can this look like? What defense, all it would take for a guy like that is to get a lot of playing time and then get benched once or twice because he's not showing the same effort on the defensive side of the ball. That wakes up professional players. People don't understand that. They get woken up throughout their career. I had a wake-up call that Tuesday night against the Houston Rockets. I got benched in the second quarter, didn't play in the second half, and it was because of my lack of defense. And what I do, I got in the gym and I just want to be a great defender. I worked on my footwork. I worked on my effort. As long as you give great effort all the time, you can be a decent defender. You can be good in spots if you just give effort. So it's about will when it comes to defense, I think, more than just talent, because look at some of these guys like a Patrick Beverley. This dude, first off, he was averaging 30 a game in high school. He was an offensive monster in college too, when you think about it. But when they get, that's just not my role. And so Patrick Beverley was like, how can I stay in the NBA? And he had to fight and go from overseas and all that. But when you look at that guy, I'm going to just be a nuisance. I'm going to be a defender. I'm going to be a tick on your best player. And I'm just going to follow him around. And that was his will and his want to find a way to stay in the NBA and play on good teams. Because you could have took Patrick Beverley and kept him in the Pistons for 20 years and he would have made a whole bunch of money and all that. But like, that wasn't the way he wanted to play basketball. I don't want to score 25 a night and play for the Detroit Pistons and not really have any type of career success outside of individual accolades or whatever I may get. And you're not going to get much in Detroit anyway. So like the defense thing for me, if a guy's not a great defender, he's 18 years old, by the time he's 22, 4 years into the league, I'm pretty sure he will at least be a decent defender. And like, so you won't be a turnstile on defense. You'll be able to make some defensive plays. Even Steph Curry turned into, statistically, he actually wasn't that bad of a defender. And when he learned, okay, on ball, I'm not that great. Let me find my niche. I'll pick off the pass lanes and lead the NBA in steals for 3 years in a row.
Yep.
That's what happens when you want it. Steph Curry's still on the ball. He can't guard Kyrie. None of those guys. None of these guys can really guard each other consistently. But I can find my niche, contribute on that side of the ball, and it's more than just giving you 30 offensively. Steph was leading the league in steals, and you never thought of him as an elite defender, but he found his niche on the defensive side of the ball and how to have an impact. I think for everything that you're saying, I'm going to take the guy that's polished offensively right now. It can have an impact, and I could teach him defense. Defense can be taught. You can play defense within a system. You can play defense one-on-one, become a better defender. A coach can find a way to put you and hide you on defense. Stars get hidden all the time. And they're still great team defenses. So I'm not really concerned about the defensive thing. What about your third? Before we close out and put all the pressure on you, who's your third sleeper?
Yeah, for sure. So Quentin Post is a player who's a big man out of Boston College, and I had the pleasure of interviewing him earlier on in the cycle. before he was really starting to be on big boards. And now you're starting to see him kind of crop up in these like mid to late second rounds. Mo, there's a chance that he has like the biggest staying power of anybody in the second round, right? Because he's a real 7-footer. He's not like 6'10" in shoes, kind of almost 7 foot or anything like that. My man is actually a 7-footer. Like when he goes to bed and wake up in the morning, he's 7 feet tall, and then he plays basketball, right? So
7'1" in shoes.
yeah, so he's a 7-footer on and off the court, right? He is a great 3-point shooter, has been a plus 3-point shooter for 2 consecutive seasons, tested the NBA draft waters last year, worked out for teams like Boston, which really makes a lot of sense. And he shot well. He came back. And now, Mo, we talk about like dribble pass shoot players sometimes, and we're like, well, they can do like one thing great, maybe another thing okay. And if they work at it, maybe they can grow into that third. Like he can legit dribble, pass, and shoot, right? So great 3-point shooter for multiple seasons over at Boston College. Showed the ability to put the ball on the ground and make like these 2 dribble. I'm either going to make a play or I can even like put the ball on the ground and attack the basket and dunk. Like he's underrated athletically, and he's a good rebounder too. And he's a great, I won't say like, I don't know if he's going to translate up into the NBA and be like a dynamite, like rim protector, but I think for a rotational big in the NBA, that's where he's going to bring his value, right? Like we see these teams with, big men who can kind of come in and you just try to have them hold it down for 2 and 3 minutes. I think that Post is going to be better than that, like a Luke Cornett out of Boston, for example, right? I think that Quentin Post can do that. And if you look at what happens, right, like NBA teams love to have offense run through the big man. If you can have a big man that you have an offense run through, that just gives you so much versatility. I'm not talking about like your Nikola Jokic's or your Alperen Şengün's or your Domas Sabonis's or anything like that. But even like your Steven Adams, right? Like if you can get a player like him the ball, you trust him to run a DHO and make a smart pass, right? And not feel forced to make a bad decision. I think Post can kind of do some of those same things. So when you're talking about a guy who in the second round, Mo, once you get past players like, a Kel'el Ware, a Zach Edey, players like that, you really only have like 2 players in the second round that I think teams are really going to try to go after as a big man target. One is Adem Bona out of UCLA, who might surprise people and sneak up and be a late first. And then past him, it's really Quentin Post. Like that's the last big man that you can have. So for teams that need a big man, there are probably a lot of teams looking at Quentin Post as like a very, likely target for them to go after, which I think might improve his stock. It's kind of supply and demand at that point. So I just think 7-foot dribble pass shoot guy, upperclassman who makes smart reads, and for 2 consecutive years at Boston College has shown that he can kind of shoulder the load on both sides of the ball. You scale down that role as a role player in the NBA. Mo, we could be talking about a guy right now in Quentin Post that it's like what were NBA teams thinking on draft night when they had a guy who has shown that he can check so many boxes? Why is he this low on draft night?
Yeah, and for you to say that is like, just think about it. Think about like the Lakers, the Heat, who else? Dallas for a point. Now Dallas heading into the playoffs, I think with Gafford, Lively, they put it to bed. But like you were concerned about their size, and you were thinking like coming into this draft, they're going to need another big man. Like when you look at
Oklahoma City.
Yeah, Oklahoma City, like, and their name is attached to almost every big man. Like, look, if we don't get this big man here, we'll probably get this big man here. We expect Oklahoma. So I'm pretty sure they're going to take a big man at some point because every draft person attaches one of the big men at some point. If they miss out on him, they're going to get him. If they miss out all the way down to probably the last big man, if he's the last one left, OKC is going to find a way to take him. And so but that's also a scarcity. Like, why do these elite teams, the number 1 team in the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron and AD, the Dallas Mavericks who are playing in the NBA Finals, the Miami Heat who just went to the finals. Why is it that a big man seems like to be a missing a thing of need, a glaring thing of need on the roster, and then you would pass up on a post after? Like during the draft, you'll pass up on him knowing that was one of your biggest needs. And then he's going to go and contribute for another team that needed a big man. And you're going to pass him. And we're going to be looking. And there's going to be every single team that needed a big man that doesn't address it. We're going to be like, you had him. You had it. It's like with the Derek Lively last year. Like the Mavs were able to get Derek Lively. And I think if you did a redraft, I don't know how much higher he would go. I think his stock is essentially went up in these playoffs late when everybody got to sit and watch the Dallas Mavericks. So it looked a little different, but he probably still would go a little bit higher. But even still, you're like, that was the perfect piece for Dallas. We're constantly seeing him working on his 3-point shot. Maybe you want to see it in game time, but you've been seeing him working on his 3-point shot late in the playoffs. I do not want to see you trying to take threes if you haven't done it all year in the Western Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, but you see the ceiling of Lively and you see it getting better and he's only 20 years old. So why not have that same thought process with some of these other big men? Because that's usually the biggest need for a lot of these teams that don't win championships, and it's the hardest find. Big men don't get free agency like that. They get drafted fairly quickly, and the ones that do fall or undrafted free agents typically is something physically they can't get up and down the court, and they don't pan out. Like a Luke Garza, like I know now he's not trash, but I'm just saying like this dude was one of the best players in college basketball. But you knew while watching him, like I told people when I watched Luke Garza play basketball, it was like me watching JT Barrett play quarterback at Ohio State. I knew that was just a great college player, and that's it. He's not going to go do anything at the next level for the most part, and that's fine. Sometimes guys are just great college players, but when there's a glaring need for these championship caliber teams, need a big man, and then they'll go through the draft and go get guards and 6'7", 6'8" wings and try and find the next Luka and next Tatum, as opposed to just getting a guy like a big man that could contribute to your team right now. I think it's stupid. Like, I do think it's stupid. And I'd be wondering, like, do the GMs listen to others? Like, you guys are scouts. What y'all do at No Ceilings, y'all are scouts. Y'all are on deck. Y'all are at these events. Y'all are at the combine. Y'all are interviewing these players. You're watching their workouts individually. Like, so y'all are true scouts. Do they just not hear you? Do they not care? Do they not listen? Like, what is it about? Like, I just will never understand. Like, if I got 10 scouts telling me this guy is going to be a good pro, maybe I'll listen. All I am is a GM. A lot of GMs don't even have elite basketball backgrounds. Like, they just fall in favor. So if I'm a GM, why wouldn't I listen to a lot of the scouts that are pretty high on them and read these scouting reports and take them serious and respect? I'm a GM, but I respect your craft. I understand this is what you do, and you've done it in hours. You might be right. But everybody else wants to be right, and nobody would want to be like, man, if I would have listened to Steven at No Ceilings, I heard what he said about this prospect. Had I listened, I would have been right. But, sometimes the male ego and pride, especially in the NBA and these front offices, can get in the way. So, Steven, I do appreciate your time, but I'm going to put you on blast because if everybody stayed this long, this is what they want to hear. Put your GM cap on, all your scouting, everything you've done scouting. I know it's going to come into this, but as of right now, the Atlanta Hawks have the number 1 pick. Could change. I'm hearing some things that it may change. I think a lot of people expect it to change, but the Atlanta Hawks have the number 1 pick. You are the GM of the Atlanta Hawks. Who are you taking? You are on the clock.
Alex Sarr. I think Alex Sarr is the player that you got to go with.
No question.
No. In my opinion, there's no question. He's not number 1 on my board, so I want to lead with that, right? I have Steph Castle, number 1 player on my board. I don't think it makes sense for Atlanta. I could even be wrong in saying that, right? But if I'm looking at the current makeup of the Atlanta Hawks, right, and I look at the guards they have, and I look at the wings that they have, and I even look at the big men that they have, right? Clint Capella has been a long mainstay in the NBA. He's fine for what he is, right? Onyeka Okongwu, a lot of people were big on him on draft night. I was a little bit lower than the consensus, and he's been a fine NBA rotational player, right? I think that what we have seen in the NBA over the past, I'll say maybe 5 years, let's just say 5-year window, Mo, if you can get a 7-foot defender who can cover so much ground on that side of the ball, look at Victor Wembanyama is probably the Michael Jordan of this archetype right now, right? And then you got players like, Chet Holmgren. You got players like Evan Mobley. You got players like Nick Claxton for the Brooklyn Nets. And then kind of subsects of these, like a Kristaps Porzingis is probably like the godfather of this archetype, right? And then you have other players like a Jaren Jackson Jr. You have these, what I refer to as like malleable bigs who you can put into a position and they can cover so much ground. You probably don't put them as like the premier center position piece, right? Even though they will probably be listed as a center, you probably put them on like a perimeter guy who can come over and make like these incredible weak side rim protection, moves because they're sleight of frame, but they move so daggum well on the floor. They have great hip fluidity. They have great reaction times and instincts, and their hand, like the ball tracking with them is just supreme. So you put these guys in these spots. Look at like what Evan Mobley did for the Cavs. Once they finally said, let's play him at the 5. No more of this twin tower lineup. Let's put him exclusively at this 5 at the 5. He had kind of like a mini evolution within this year's playoffs. Yeah. Chet Holmgren, like you can knock the rebounding if you want to as a team, but look at what they were able to do on the defensive end. They gave the Mavs real fits because they had a guy like Dort who you can put on Luka. And then even when you get past Luka, you have to worry about the ever-present Chet Holmgren, right? So we've seen what the Memphis Grizzlies have been able to do with the Jaren Jackson. We've seen what Boston looks like when KP's on the floor. So if I have guys who can set the table, who can apply rim pressure, and I have reliable wing defense, and I insert a player of this archetype at the 5 on my team, I'm signaling to the rest of the NBA that I'm ready to contend and I'm ready to compete. That's why I take Alex Sarr number 1 if I'm Atlanta.
Yeah, and for everything you said is why, like, I wouldn't disagree. Now, if they make some trades and so like a Castle will make sense because maybe Trae Young's not on that roster, okay, cool. Sure. But like you said, as the roster is constructed right now, you have Trae Young, you got DeJounte Murray, you have DeAndre Hunter, you got Okongwu, you got Capella. So thinking about what you have, what fits right now,
Jalen Johnson.
Better. Yeah, you got Jalen Johnson. So what walks in here seamlessly fits and can change the trajectory of where we're going as a team and as an organization. I agree with you. I think it's Alex Sarr. I've heard nothing but great things. I'm going to be honest. I haven't really done no film. I know who he is just following you guys and then obviously knowing the game of basketball. His name has popped up throughout the year.
Can I do a quick story? Can I do a quick story real quick? So Alex Sarr has been the name that's been buzzing like all process long. What's funny about him when he played at Overtime Elite, me and Corey from No Ceilings, we went to the Overtime Elite Pro Day, and this was when they had him and Asar Thompson. They were like the front runners, right? Everyone wanted to interview them. They had Alex Sarr on the team too for the Young Dreamers, and when it came to like their pro combine like media availability, I was literally the only person who asked him a question. That was like, no one was like, okay, this guy is going to be the number 1 pick in an NBA draft that night. And I asked him like, I said, Alex, you know, you're showing that you're a great floor spacer. How do you balance that with the rest of your game? And he said that that's something that he needs to work on. And then he goes to the NBA or the NBL, works on it. And now we're talking about him as a potential number 1 overall pick.
So that's got to be a feel good story though. Like that's got to be one. This is why you do it. Like, and this is one of those you were on him. Like you get to say, I was on him before a lot. Obviously, when any one of us say that, I could say I won't even say hot take, but I could throw a take out there on how I feel about a player. And if I say it and nobody's creating buzz, and then by the end of the season, I look right, everybody else look wrong, or I was right before everybody else was. Oh, no, you didn't say it. But luckily for us, you got think pieces on those ceilings. You record. You got all the, I can go back and tell y'all I'm not BSing in the world. So Alex Sarr will be the number 1 pick. If Steven was the GM, I think that's the safe pick. I think if you pick him in your Atlanta, you don't lose your job if he doesn't pan out. That's another thing is like with this draft, you're talking about, people talk about the lack of talent. There's no superstar, which means there's no number 1 pick that you really value. But like Sarr is safe. I don't think Landry Fields, I don't think he loses his job by drafting Alex Sarr. And if he does, it'll have nothing to do with Alex Sarr if he doesn't pan out. This is one of those drafts. I think you take a guy that fits for your team, your philosophy, and it's the safest pick for number 1 right now. If you don't decide to trade back or whatever it may be, I think it's safe. And I think you'll benefit 3-4 years from now, and it'll look like a home run pick, which I think there will be a few of those guys in this draft that will be home run picks. Take maybe 3 years, 4 years for them to look like home run picks, but then they'll be talking about contract extensions with their current team that they got drafted by. So that's perfect. Hey, they turned out to be home run picks right before it's time to pay them. Cool. I have no problem with paying the guy we drafted 3 years ago because he's been nothing but a home run pick since then. So Alex Sarr to the Hawks, to me, I'm with you. I'm riding with you. It makes the most sense in the world. So Steven, before we go, just let everybody know where they can follow you in anything that you got coming up. I know because people will be listening to this and the NBA draft will be coming up. Is No Ceilings doing another draft show for the draft?
Yeah.
Year?
Oh yeah, we're holding it down. We're gonna have day 1 and day 2. We're gonna ride deep on that, and still kind of working out who's gonna be where, like how many and all that stuff. But best believe that there's gonna be a live draft reaction and show for No Ceilings. But Mo, man, first off, thanks for having me on. Big congratulations. Love seeing you here on Believe in Mavs, man. Like you are one of the hardest workers that I've ever got the pleasure to know, man. So even though you're a Cowboys fan, even though you're an Ohio State fan and a LeBron James fan, I don't hold any of that against you because all the stuff that you got going on for you, man, is well earned, well deserved. And seriously, man, I know that we're gonna, no matter how big you get, no matter how big No Ceilings gets, whatever, it's all love, and we're always gonna be available for one another, man. But anyone that wants to follow me, by the time this comes out, I think I will have done. If not, I will do like a draft question Q&A with Trilly Donovan over at Burner Ball. There's going to be a few of us at No Ceilings that do that. We have continued lottery pieces that are coming out at NoCeilingsNBA.com, like up until the draft night. Our draft guide's coming out. That's like always like our crown jewel of anything that we do.
Boy, that hit the Twitter timeline, it's over. When that hit the Twitter timeline, it's over. So yeah, man. So I appreciate you for joining the show. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. Be well, be safe. And right now is the time to follow everything at No Ceilings for the next week and a half until the draft comes. I think, by the time this drops, hopefully the NBA Finals will be open. But, make sure you go check out everything at No Ceilings. And like I said, the easiest thing is if I was you, I would go on their Substack because that goes straight to your email every day, every morning, late night. It doesn't matter. You get the notification that they're doing work, and you can read the articles, check them out on Twitter and everything else. But make sure you definitely check out my guy, Steven. But be well, be safe, and we will catch you guys for more draft content on another episode of Believe in Mavs.